Hello and welcome to the second podcast of Mad About Comics.
Yay!
I'm Greg.
I'm Stephanie.
And welcome back to our super duper, fantastic, terrific,
You forgot phenomenal.
phenomenal, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious podcast.
No.
So, last time we covered, what did we cover? We covered seconds.
We did, and if you missed our explanation, our fantastic explanation about our phenomenal name that we came up with, MAD is a, God, what is it called?
Married Analogous...
No, it's a what? You know what I'm talking about.
Acronym?
Yes, that thing.
It's an acronym.
It stands for Married Analogous Dorks. I went into an extremely long explanation of what analogous means. Greg thought it was a little inappropriate, but I figured I'd give you some color into what the word sounds like, but what it actually means, and I think it explains us to a T. If you missed the first podcast, go back and watch it / listen to it, because unlike your typical podcast, we put cool little slides, so if you don't know what we're talking about,
could look up and see.
Look it up, because the biggest title in MAD is that first and foremost, or last, because it's the D in MAD, is that we're dorks. We don't consider ourselves geeks. We don't know everything there is to know, and that we're Poindexters, if you will. We just like to dork out in comics because it's something that we love. We're a little awkward about it, but we're proud to be loving comics and in our own skin. So yeah.
We're not nerds either.
We're definitely not nerds. We don't dress like nerds. We dress like, we don't really think about what we wear in the mornings. At least I don't have to anymore because I don't have your conventional day job. Yay. Anyways, so we're here again tonight. Podcast number 2. Greg was diving into all the topics we talked about during Mad About podcast number 1. We did talk about seconds. But before that, did we talk about anything? It was actually...
No, we kicked it off by Seconds, which was by Brian Lee O'Malley, who did Scott Pilgrim. Then we talked a little bit about Batman Hush. We talked a little bit about DC shows, and then we really discussed 2 movies, Guardians, and Batman, Superman, Dawn of Justice, which is coming out in about 2 years.
Hinging more upon the casting decisions of Wonder Woman more than anything. Just to kind of put that argument, or more politically correct conversation, to a close, because like we said in the last podcast, we could go on and on and on about the casting decisions they decided to make about Gal Gadot. I was just looking at a review about 20 believable butt-kicking women in movies on Entertainment Weekly. If you missed this article,
There's got to be a list of more than 20. That's better than Gal Gadot.
Regardless, it doesn't matter. She's not anywhere to even be honorably mentioned on this list. They did mention Expendables 3 that just recently came out, the recent trend of MMA stars like Ronda Rousey, Gina Carano.
That's what I mentioned last time.
Mentioned Linda Hamilton and Terminator 2. She made the list. So I thought it was so... I was going to let Greg talk about our outline for today, because in all fairness, he put it together. So let's see what he has for us.
So for the modern issue, we're going to start off with the Batgirl run that Gail Simone was penning. Just came to an end with issue 34, regretfully. Then as the throwback issue, we're going to go back to Marvel Civil War. That was a pretty big event in the Marvel Universe. For the shows, we're going to be talking about one of...
my favorites.
Yeah, one of your favorites that we're really looking forward to, iZombie, which also came off of a comic book. And then for the 2 movies, we're going to talk about Captain America, The Winter Soldier. And as the upcoming movie, we're going to be talking about Avengers Age of Ultron, which should be hitting the silver screen next year in 2015. So that's pretty much what's on the slate for today.
And don't get us wrong, guys. We know there's a lot of comic book movies that have come out. As we're talking just a couple weeks ago, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Sin City. We will get to them, okay?
So I still like the original better.
Don't worry your pretty little heads. I agree. There's something to be said about actual kind of the live action turtles with the kind of puppetry
or costumes.
The costumes. It was pretty cool.
And it had Vanilla Ice in it.
Yes, it did. The ninja rap. Loved that dance. I had it down pat. And on a random off note, we're gonna hold each other accountable, being husband and wife. And we actually took your guys' comments and feedback of some of the stuff you wanted to see more of and less of. We're gonna keep the music down to a minimum. We're gonna keep the slides and what we're chatting about and our passion to a maximum. And I'm gonna hold myself accountable to pinching Greg every time he says "if you will," because that's kind of a filler buzz phrase for him. And then he conversely can pinch me every time I say "long story short," because we went back and reviewed our last podcast and we say it more often than not, and we were kind of sick of hearing each other say that. So
We're not professionals.
we're not. We're dorks. Didn't we? Did we mention that? Anywho, so let's dive right in.
Well, just to keep with the theme, I'm drinking out of Stargirl today.
Oh, and since I didn't mention her last, of course I had to mention her. I'm drinking from her cup of feline goodness, Catwoman, the Bombshell DC version.
We're going to try to make that an ongoing thing that we're always going to be drinking from
But
that.
it doesn't mean we're lushes. I have more of a ginger ale. A little bit of wine might have like spilt in there somewhere, but it's more ginger ale than anything
melted ice.
now. Yeah, it's melted ice.
So jumping right in, Batgirl by Gail Simone, part of the DC New 52 relaunch. Had a lot of artists, to be fair. Ed Benes, Artie and Syaf did it.
Vicente Cifuentes.
Yes.
Vicente.
Vicente Cifuentes, Ed Benes, Artie and Syaf, Daniel Sampier, a lot of the artists. The 34-issue run, Gail Simone penned.
The design was actually, but it started out with Jim Lee, right? He helped with the design, or he kind of oversaw the project.
I don't recall.
Like her costuming.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, he is one of the head honchos at DC, so I'm sure he had some input, but he was also busy penning Justice League. I was saying, so with the 34 issues, Gail Simone penned all about 3 of them. There was like 2 or 3 weird issues in there that she didn't pen, but they were kind of out of the continuity. But yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it started off, seeing as you have the book.
Yeah, I mean, I have the book. We decided to read all of them. We physically have the first 3 graphic novels, which, if you guys know graphic novels and trade paperbacks, there's about 6 to 7, you'd say, issues.
About 6.
Yeah, and they're fun reads. If you really get into them, you could easily get through them in an hour because you're just fervently page turning the issue. And Gail Simone, wow, what better writer. I immediately fell in love with her writing because it was such raw, gritty storytelling from the point of view of Batgirl. And for once, I would say, or at least in recent memory, it's a great telling from a point of view from a hero that is so fantastically flawed, and she doesn't have it all together, and she shares all her thoughts so candidly. I really loved all the asides whenever Batgirl was talking to the audience or to herself, or however you want to kind of cut it. How, she just came out of giving you the backstory, when Gail Simone took on the New 52 Batgirl series a couple of years ago. This is coming right out of her 3-year coma. Barbara Gordon, or Barbara Gordon, as her roommate Alicia would say, which Alicia is a huge recurring character in the series. She shows up in at least, I'd say, a dozen of the comics in the 34 run so far. It may go longer. I hope to see it run longer, and obviously, as DC is notorious for doing, it does kind of duck in and out of other comics in the DC world, Detective Comics, Death of the Family, which it gives a nod to Death in the Family from the iconic Death of Robin. What was it, a decade or 2 beforehand?
Yeah, this one was Death of the Family that they turn into.
Yes.
Also, just an interesting note, it was really nice to see the different direction that DC took with the relaunch, and Gail Simone really did a phenomenal job because if you've been a comic book reader for a while, particularly when they first started out, DC and Marvel did things very differently. People in DC, their superpowers, and obviously we're talking about Batgirl and Batman, who aren't traditional superheroes, meaning that they're just regular people that are a bit extraordinary but no real powers. But kind of back to the main point, in DC, the characters always looked at what they had, their abilities, if you will, as a blessing, and they just kind of went right with it. Whereas Marvel, it took it a different direction, and these people had problems to deal with. Like Peter Parker was a teenager, didn't know how to deal with life before becoming a Superman. Same thing with the Fantastic Four, and that's what Gail Simone really did a good job of painting of Batgirl as this woman who has real life issues going on and is struggling in identifying herself
and
while she's doing
reconciling her
this.
past, especially being a girl that is so terrifyingly, and she points this out in a couple of key issues that she writes throughout the series, afraid of being shot again, afraid that she doesn't deserve to wear the Batgirl uniform. She's so wonderfully human and flawed, where throughout the majority of the series, there's a couple people that she killed, or at least she thinks she's killed. Not giving away too much, but it's incredible to just hear her inner thoughts, and you can quite easily put yourself in her place, male or female for that matter, and feel like, wow, this could really be me if I ever decided to put, kind of like the movie Kick-Ass, if I ever decided to put on a cape, this would be the realistic thoughts or musings of a real human Cape Crusader, which they even give a nod to, I think later in the series, it was upper 20s or issue 30 or onward, how she doesn't even really think that any hero is really a hero and deserving to wear the cape. It's really about whether you come out on top. And a lot of people that she thinks she could have so closely become, like her, which she claims...
Not everything's clear cut.
Well, yeah, but I mean, Batgirl personally claims that Nightfall, who is a recurring character in the series, could easily be her nemesis, but also easily have been the person that she became, so easily bent on revenge to what happened to her and her family. And Nightfall, for all intents and purposes, she was a Silver Spoon grown-up brat. And I was telling Greg this earlier, she reminds me a lot of what, if they were in the same universe, I think they make a great couple, what Punisher is in the Marvel universe. But she, unlike Punisher, she always grew into having so much opportunity because she'd had billionaire parents. And then she inherited it once they died in a very fatal, terrible way. And you don't necessarily feel 100% pissed off at any of these bad guys that she confronts. Some of them, yes, but the majority of the ongoing villains she goes against in these series, there doesn't seem to be, that clear-cut, oh, this is a bad guy and she should really go after them, even though she has darker thoughts about killing people.
She also has her henchmen, whereas Punisher, not so much. And just kind of get back to Batgirl, as you were alluding to earlier, the series, or a recurring theme, is her dealing with these memories she has of the Joker. If you haven't read The Killing Joke, we kind of have to give it away a little bit.
We could give that because we're talking about the new 52, Gail Simone as the writer penning the series.
So they brought back Batgirl. Basically, Batgirl in The Killing Joke turned into Oracle, and she was paralyzed when she was shot by...
No, when she was paralyzed and became the Oracle, was she a lesbian in that series?
No, that's Batwoman.
That was Batwoman.
Batwoman.
Confused the two.
Batgirl dealt with the transgender roommate that Gail Simone introduced, the Alicia character that you mentioned.
Alicia, yeah.
Yes. The recurring issue is being shot by the Joker, and she always has flashbacks at inopportune times and things like that, because that's basically what happened in The Killing Joke.
I'm glad that he mentioned that, I'm glad that he did mention The Killing Joke, because that was a very key issue to me. Like, what brought Greg back into your traditional Marvel DC comics was Hush. Like I mentioned in the last podcast, I always confuse Hush with Killing Joke, because... honestly, unless you jog my memory and start talking about Hush, you'd be like, wow, that really was an iconic key issue. But ultimately, you tend to remember the things that you have inclinations towards and the things that you like. And Killing Joke really stuck out to me because of how brutal and even the way they angled, almost like a filmmaker, like the different panels and what she was feeling and the utter sense of despair, being on the ground, not being able to do anything, and the Joker so, like typical Joker, concisely planning this out to the T. And not a spoiler, but he makes another kind of killing joke or stab, if you will, at trying to disrupt her own personal family, Batman's family, as like I mentioned, the Bat family, as I mentioned earlier. There were some crossover issues within the Batgirl run where, you know, we encounter her trying to protect herself, protect her family, protect her parents. There's a lot of drama going on with her brother in the series. And then
her brother's a recurring character.
A recurring character doing some evil things, who would have thought? And supposed marriage proposal from the Joker.
Yes, and it also has Barbara Gordon going on a date and having a boyfriend, which is good. And
I wanted to mention him because I love him in this.
Well, so I like the character Ricky. Sometimes I'm a little bit confused by, they seem to be opposites, but I guess that makes sense because, you know, they say opposites attract, but I don't really see Ricky's character as the type that a Barbara Gordon or a Batgirl would go for, but it makes sense, I guess, and Gail Simone does a really good job, and then we also have to remind ourselves that Batgirl is only 20?
22.
Yeah,
21.
Like very early 20s, 20 in this because
she got paralyzed at 18, so she's 21. She just turned legal drinking.
Yeah, and she said she didn't have her legs for 3 years, so
and
yeah,
she's
21.
And the boy, Ricky, that Greg was mentioning, to give you some backstory, he fell victim to Nightfall's henchmen, and he was caught...
And Nightfall.
And Nightfall, and he was caught in a really grisly bear trap and lost his leg, and Batgirl always felt personally accountable and guilty for that because she was basically telling him to go home, and as soon as she left, this eccentric character, Nightfall, that feels all thieves should be eradicated from Gotham in very grisly ways.
As Punisher-like, as you mentioned.
Very Punisher-like, which I think they'd make a cute couple. Decides to basically, like I said, grisly take care of these thieves. And we're talking people that even do petty theft. She wants to, like, brutally murder them.
And that's who Ricky was. Let's get that out.
He was a
open.
petty
thief. He wasn't, you know, like a
saint.
It
was just a one-time thing.
Yeah.
His brother was way worse than he was. He just fell into.
She met him on the job.
Met him on the job by saving him. But truth be told, as we dig deeper into who she is and what her characteristic stylings are, I mean, the girl's a badass. I'm secretly jealous of her. The way Gail wrote her was that she, very much like a lot of us, she doesn't want to rely on anybody. She ended up leaving her roommate for that was a roommate of hers for a long time. After she became paralyzed, she decided to go out in the world and find a random roommate that actually is kind of a extreme activist, testing on animals, corporations, you know, down with the man and stuff. And what was so great about her...
Politically outspoken.
Politically, yeah. And what was so great about her and Ricky's relationship is that it's not something that I've ever seen in a series, is a cave crusader not being so big into themselves where they feel like they can't date a typical person that they saved. What's so cool is that because she's flawed and she doesn't always know what she's doing, she's open to entertain other people's ideas and thoughts. She even mentioned several times in the series how she defers to Black Canary as her rock and someone that she looks up to, which is great because I believe in life you always have to have a mentor that you look up to, and then someone on your level and maybe a mentee, which we come to find more and more, whether she admits it or not until the very end, in a way, because Alicia never questioned all the time she came home with bruises and everything, even though it looked like she thought it was domestic assault. Alicia always wanted to be more a part of Batgirl's secretive world, and at one point Batgirl finally lets her in. But in the case of Ricky, what I liked about that is that she ends up dating a dude that she saved. But what was cool is that as the series progresses, he ends up keeping his own. We won't say that he completely saves her, but, you know, he's 19, she's 21, they're within the dating range. And what I love is that love hit her by surprise because she was trying to cover for Ricky because he was trying to give her the kind of 411 Court of Owls. He was trying to clue her in on that, and in order to save him right back after giving her really important information to track down who the bad guys were, she ends up kissing him as a cover because, you know, his brother was gonna
His
rat
brother's
him
an
out.
active gang member.
Yeah, he was going to rat him out if he thought that he was cohorting with Batgirl, who's synonymous with the law in a lot of thieves' eyes. So what was so cute was that it was a relationship and romance very accidentally happened out of circumstance, out of her trying to save him, and in turn, she never expected this. He kind of saved her. So what I liked about that part when he said that maybe someday they'll go on a date is that he, as a very ancillary, secondary, even tertiary character that we thought we weren't going to see much of through the series, he basically invited her to come as she is, not be Batgirl. And, you know, if she came to visit him later down the road, which she does, meet him as he's trying to change his criminal ways, he's volunteering at a soup kitchen, she finds him quite endearing, and they end up, she keeps saying unofficially dating and unofficially being her boyfriend. One line I really, really loved was later in the series when things got hot and heavy between them, and there was a lot of controversy about whether or not they're a relationship. Well, in my eyes, it didn't look like it was going to go anywhere really quickly after certain things happened. But what I loved was the kind of one pager or several lines that Gail Simone wrote from Batgirl's point of view, and how her and Ricky at this point have a very complicated relationship, and how, you know, she could explain her side on a Valentine's card, like, hey, I love you, but you shot this person and it's complicated, so I don't want to talk to you right now, was basically the point of where they were at in that relationship.
Batgirl also gets a new bestie. She befriends one of the Talons from the Court of Owls, Strix, and if you're reading other titles, that crosses over into Birds of Prey. But it's a good series. So, you know, at this point in time, Barbara Gordon has a roommate, a boyfriend, a new best friend slash quasi-sidekick in the Talon. She has a bit of an identity crisis, and really sad to see the series go, because with issue 35, they're taking a new direction. Gail Simone's not writing it. She's going to be moving to a hipster area, and they're going to be making it more lighthearted. Not lighthearted,
You mean the new
but
Batgirl?
The new direction of Batgirl, with starting with issue 35. It's going to be much more light and not as dark. New outfit. She seems a lot younger. I'm not sure if I like it. I really liked what Gail Simone did. I really liked where she was headed with the character. I didn't think it was too dark. I thought it was just right for a Batman-themed character, because that's what Batgirl is ultimately. You know, the jury will be out on starting on issue 35 with the direction they go, but Gail Simone's run on Batgirl is truly epic. Definitely read it if you haven't already. It's really one of my favorite New 52 series out there.
You know, and one last thought, it really reads like a really good TV show that you want to keep coming back to, or a movie. And the way it ends is like a to-be-continued movie, because the whole time her roommate so badly wanted to let her in, and it ends on such a crazy, energetic up note about her finally including more people into her world, and then leaving a lot of her own personal world behind to follow through on some promises that she made to friends that help her ultimately close the issues she has with Nightfall. So it's a really epic closing. I could see this easily go for at least 10 more, 12 more issues.
It should have. We'll see what direction they take it in. But in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next, the old issue, if you will. And it's one that you recently read, kind of a major player in the Marvel Universe, Civil War. You want to give them the background on that, really?
Oh gosh, there's so much behind Civil War, and making good on our promise to you guys, how we said that we'll keep you brushed up on key issues, and how there's some things that can kind of help you. I don't want to say cheat, but yeah, let's just say cheat, because I can't find any other good words in my Rolodex brain. It's not working too fast right now. Is that Civil War really jumps in the Marvel Universe at a crossroads, mid-2000s. It basically splits all of your favorite Marvel characters into two factions, the ones that agree to be registered and those who don't, all because of one huge fatal accident started by a character that I personally loved. I didn't know anything about Civil War before reading it. I was just randomly searching around Comic Vine because it's like the encyclopedia for comic book characters. And I was just randomly looking over what characters are under P, and I came across Penance, and I'm like, what's this guy's story? Oh, wow, like, over 600 plus points and what do you call it, just barbs and
his costume causes him pain.
That causes him pain, but pain gives him power. You better know him for those who did read Civil War. He was Speedball, and him and his ridiculous camera TV crew that wanted to basically...
Reality television ruined it.
In the era of reality television, he wanted to get him and his Cape Crusaders that go and fight crime, almost kind of like Dog the Bounty Hunter, but with superheroes. They wanted to take on Nitro and his crew, but even he elected to say they're taking off more than he could chew. But wow, it'd be great ratings, and that's kind of what kicked it off. Didn't know if you want to take it from there.
Yeah, basically there was a big accident in Stamford, Connecticut. A lot of people died, and the government was kind of outraged. So they're like, okay, this has to stop. What are we going to do? So they said, okay, well, here's the Superhuman Registration Act, which basically said that if you're a metahuman or a person with superpowers, you have to register. Registering meant the authorities would know your identity. They had to know who you were, and as the name implies, registered. You were then allowed to fight crime. If you went unregistered, you were a vigilante, which is frowned upon. The two main key players, as it seems to kind of always revolve around in Marvel, when you get down to it, was Captain America and Iron Man. And ironically enough, Captain America, who was, the beacon of truth and justice, was against the Registration Act, funnily enough. Tony Stark, Iron Man, was all for it. He said it makes sense. This is how, he was a bit more politically savvy. He understood that this was the game as they played it, as they had to play it, rather, with the politicians. And Captain America, Steve Rogers, said, no way, I'm not doing it. And they each had their followers, and that's kind of where it went in. Spider-Man had a really big story. I like that Spider-Man in the Civil War, they introduced the Iron Spider. He started working with Iron Man.
Who made him the suit.
Yeah.
And Hank helped with that.
Yes.
Or, Mr. Fantastic.
Mr. Fantastic. And it just really showed a different side to Peter Parker. It showed him more as the really smart, more of a grown-up, as opposed to how he always was, which was kind of just the awkward teen.
And what's so crazy about it is that you'll never guess where some of these metahumans or iconic superheroes land, on which side will they land. And some of them start on one side and they cross over.
Mm-hmm.
And then it quickly, very chaotically falls into the gray with them actually hiring supervillains to take down Captain America and all these quote-unquote vigilantes. And, I mean, who would ever consider Captain America to be part of the quote-unquote resistance and fall out of favor in the American public? But it takes precedent in the Marvel world arena as well, and they even have like a recap. All you really need to read is 7 key issues, and then there's also like these additional issues about notes about what key metahumans and villains fell on what side and who ended up being alive, who died, and what was the stance on the world arena as far as Atlantis? Did Namor come to whose aid? Wakanda, Black Panther and Storm, what was their stance? They ended up coming in because a certain friend died. And Genosha, and then how Emma Frost felt, and the X-Men. Fantastic Four was fantastically divided because of certain happenings, if you will. Such a global effect that Civil War has within the universe. I mean, it's no wonder that people are just hoping that Marvel and Disney can buy back the rights to the Fantastic Four and all the Fox owned franchises from Murdoch, because if they could do that, because the Fantastic Four have a huge role to play in Civil War, there could actually be a Civil War movie. But if you guys don't know the politics in the filmmaking world, a lot of these titles like Ghost Rider and Fantastic Four, they're owned by other production companies that have pay or play clauses. And what that means is that you'll sometimes see them churn over not so decent titles just so they can keep a stronghold on the actual intellectual property. And what Marvel's got done right that DC doesn't have, because they're kind of owned by different entities, if you will, different companies, is that they're all centrally housed now for the most part, except for a couple titles like Fantastic Four. Hopefully X-Men can come over, and then we could see a Civil War movie.
It would be interesting. A lot of the villains really went to the pro-registration side because they saw it as a means to be legitimate. They said, hey, if we register, they'll wipe our slate clean, which is pretty much what they were promised. So that's why there's a lot of supervillains, as Stephanie mentioned, fighting these good guys. And really it all just comes to an end with the sides really not giving up. They each fight, as she mentioned, people cross over to the other sides, and really it's just an ongoing battle. It looks like it's going to be a stalemate, and then towards the end it really looks like Captain America is about to win, if you will, by finishing off Iron Man, and he kind of looks around at all the damage that has been done, and that's the one thing that he wanted to avoid, and Captain America kind of does what Captain America does, which is, just somewhat the unexpected, but also the brave thing. He gives up. He surrenders himself to the forces and just says, you know what, that's enough. Enough innocent people have been hurt, and it's time to end this.
Yeah, and what's so surprising about that is that he was so passionate about keeping the identities, and even Nick Fury agreed with him, and he helped give him safe haven for all these vigilantes, metahumans, like Captain America falling on the resistance side, to give a safe haven for people that just so badly wanted to point the finger. And doesn't it really just quickly, so easily resound to what the politics were going on, just after 9/11, early 2000s, mid 2000s, the American worldview in real life was really very much like, okay, let's all be on this, and let's make it all about America doing the right thing, when there's really two sides to every story, and it could just take one little event that can divide a country. And even Washington said, having a dichotomy or a duality to any government could be very fatal. And it was crazy because you saw it play out, this graphic novel that speaks volumes about what was going on in politics at the time. And what was crazy about Peter Parker / Spider-Man being the poster boy about it is that he was at the forefront, maybe convinced by Tony Stark, Iron Man, or not, to come forward and then show his identity, and then very much regretting it because he didn't realize Aunt May and Mary Jane lives would be put at risk the second that he was fighting, and then a fight to put these metahumans, Captain America's people, to give up and register. They went too far. Let's just put it that way. People got killed. That's what drove Black Panther, Storm, and the people of Wakanda to get involved, even though they didn't want to, because they're considered a sovereign nation. They're not part of the U.S. Some super mega groups in Canada got killed because of this, and even though they weren't really involved. And what's crazier still is that there was some silver lining, but it was kind of like a really fatal tale, where it was like the silver lining that Iron Man was getting at was, let's have a happy medium, because if we didn't come into the politics early and find some middle ground, then it would have ended up being a lot worse, and then all humans would have lost the trust of the general human public. So he's very politically savvy in that way, Tony Stark is, and in reality he just had more toys than Captain America. I was actually quite sad to see Captain America lose, but the silver lining that Iron Man portrayed was that there's people even like the Thunderbolts, because now the 50 states get to choose who their group representative of superhumans get to be, to help be, kind of protectors of each state. Tony Stark was mentioning, something that we tried for years that never happened until the Human Registration Act happened, was that the state of Colorado wanted to choose the Thunderbolts as representing them, and that has Bullseye and Venom and all these sorts of dark villains, but because they were following the quote-unquote law to bring all these metahumans in, all of a sudden they are considered decent people. And isn't that like so true to politics. All of a sudden, the bad guys become the good guys because they're following what the norm is of the moment. So I just it's so poignant. It's so good. You could keep reading beyond the 7 key issues because there's like 50 plus issues. There's some fun issues with Deadpool. Cable is always an interesting dynamic character because he falls in the gray. Punisher, we mentioned Punisher would be a great coupling with who did I mention? Nightfall from the DC world because he comes in and wants to help Captain America and the Resistance. They later find that was kind of a bad move because, Punisher operates very much in the gray. But overall, what an epic run. I would love for this to translate somehow in the movie arena because it is so epic. Epic.
Also, very lasting impact on some of the character story arcs, namely Spider-Man. The events of this kind of come back and affect his storyline a lot, and as you mentioned, Fantastic Four and everything like that. So definitely some ripples to be felt in the Marvel Universe from the outcome of this. Of course, this sets up and goes into Secret Invasion and Siege and everything else, but it's really a really good story, or a good story arc rather. One of the few crossover events, and as Stephanie mentioned, you can make this a light read or a long read. There's 7 Civil War issues, so you can only read 7, or basically every character had their own Civil War tie-in. So you can read only 7, or you could read like 107 if you want to read, Spider-Man Civil War, Fantastic Four Civil War, Cable and Deadpool Civil War. So make much or as little of it as you'd like, but very very good story and very very poignant and very central to the Marvel universe.
Even to today.
Yep. Moving right along, we get to the show portion of this podcast, and we're going to be talking about one of your favorite shows.
A show yet to be released, but I'm really excited that they're finally deciding to go in a unique, fun direction in this subgenre. The subgenre I'm talking about can be none other than zombies.
And the show is iZombie.
Yeah. So what I love about talking about this series is that I was just looking through all zombie titles because I do a lot of research for my own zombie comic that I am penning, and I have a very fantastic artist by the name of Sean Spate from the UK that's doing all the artistry on it. Is I want to learn about other like-minded people out there that are ready to take a chance and explore more than your slow-thinking, mindless, brain-eating zombies. I love them, but let's get real. There's only so many times you can say that or tell that zombie story until it gets old. Romero definitely had the stronghold for 30, 40 years. And then we saw really awesome, iconic movies and shows like Walking Dead, where it's really not about the dead anymore. It's about the people and how they react to this cataclysmic event. And then movies like 28 Days Later, Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder's version of it, when it came out in 2004. All these retellings of zombies and their take on what a widespread virus can do to infect people and how they end up turning other people into zombies. So I'm really excited that we're diving deeper into the genre. It's not going to go away anytime soon. I think people for the longest time thought it was a fad, hoping it'd go away. More and more people are converting to the zombie side, loving zombies. And so enter iZombie. It is a really, really, really awesome novel idea that started as a Vertigo, which is owned by DC Comics label, and it has been a very popularly, widely received comic about a girl who's going to medical school, and then she ultimately turned into being a brain-eating, potentially mindless zombie, if you will. Oh gosh, I'm saying your catchphrase. Zombie, if she doesn't eat at least one brain a month or so, or else she will ultimately recess into having a corpse's mind. What's cool, what's a unique twist on this is that she can actually inherit the thoughts of the corpses that she eats, conveniently provided by the Seattle Police Department in the crime scene section as in the morgue, because she becomes roommates with a forensic pathologist, Dr. Ravi Chakrabarti. And what's so cool about it is that it's unique coupling of people that need each other. There's a detective involved, Clive, who's not really good at his job, so he takes advantage of Liv, that's our main protagonist's name, unique abilities to help solve crimes, because when she ingests a brain, and she doesn't really like eating it, mind you, she actually can inherit the thoughts of the victims that help solve the crimes. So, and it all takes place in Seattle, a place that Greg and I very much would love to live in the American Northwest. We actually kind of like the moody, rainy, but green and kind of hip atmosphere. Really great town to write in, but along the lines of the zombie genre, this seems like one of the most unique zombie titles I've seen in a while, and it's coming to us in TV form, so I'm really excited about that.
Pretty much covered everything. 28 issue series, came out in 2010. As Stephanie mentioned, she inherits the memories of the deceased, and she has to play off the fact that she's a psychic to the detective, because she can't let them know that she's actually eating brains, obviously. The main medical examiner catches on to her condition and wants to help her, and she has to kind of go along with this farce that she's a psychic, and she's helping the detective solve these cases. And it's really an interesting premise. It's a shame that it was only made 28 issues. It came out monthly, I believe, and it ran for 2 years by, as Stephanie mentioned, Vertigo, which is a DC subsidiary. So it'll be interesting, and it should be coming out. I don't know when
this fall.
This fall. They're doing some recasting of a couple characters, so I think that's what's pushing
I think more recently they had to recast her roommate. That's going to be played by Ali Michalka from Easy A.
They also recast the mother and a couple other tertiary characters. That's why the trailer, which was supposed to debut at San Diego Comic-Con, the pilot was supposed to debut. It was just an extended trailer. So just casting decisions kind of pushed it back, but it should be coming out soon. I think September, October, so maybe 1 month, 2 months tops, and it should be really fun show. So definitely check that out. It's going to be on the CW network, which is also home of Arrow and will be the home of Flash. So looks like they got some good ratings vehicles right there.
Just in time for Halloween. And what I love is that I don't know. I think we mentioned it in the last podcast. When they actually had the panel at Comic-Con, I didn't get a chance to go because I was at the portfolio reviews, which is very nerve-wracking, trying to sell my zombie comic. But at the very least, we were able to track down, I don't know if you guys ever went to SDCC, the San Diego Comic-Con, but there's a great bag swap that happens every year that you get 14 limited edition bags that are typically provided by WB, and you can put a lot of your swag that you buy in comics in it, and there's 14 different kinds. I swapped I think it was like
Gotham, maybe?
Or it was like an old school Batman show, which was pretty cool, but I wanted the iZombie bag, and iZombie bag was one of the offerings they give out for free when you do get your tickets to San Diego Comic-Con. So that's something you can look forward to when you go. They typically hand out WB labels, so like Supernatural, iZombie, a lot of different Batman ones, a detective comic one. It was a lot of fun. Just a little side note.
Yes, and then to kind of head down the home stretch, we're going to be covering just 2 movies real quick. First one was Captain America, Winter Soldier, which saw Hydra infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D., and Captain America very much becomes a vigilante, very Civil War-esque, ironically enough.
Was there an Infinity Stone that showed up at the end of this one? When the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver? No.
Yes.
I'm thinking X-Men.
No, you're right. It was the Easter egg at the end of the movie where they introduced Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, but basically they showed that this criminal element came into possession of Loki's staff or scepter from Avengers, and that itself also has an Infinity Stone in it. So they were saying that that's a bad organization, or the bad guy, that they have an Infinity Stone, and I think there's also one more, so that might make it easier for Thanos to get, because he has technically 2 of them.
There's 6 altogether.
Yeah. So.
And if you guys want to know, like, what will help you kind of clue in on, like, well, why are these so damn important? Having all these together, especially in Thanos' hands, you could quite literally run the universe. But similar to what we were basically highlighting with Civil War is that key issues, just like key artifacts within the Marvel Universe, you can let those be your guide, and then you can pretty much get what's going on just by knowing the background. So Civil War, great key issues to know about characters. Infinity Stone, great way to automatically learn about motivations behind characters wanting certain things, especially supervillains. Again, Comic Vine is a really good resource to read up on the Infinity Stones. I highly recommend.
And so, yeah. Captain America saw Hydra infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D., and Captain America and Nick Fury kind of find out about it, and Captain America is forced to fight it, but everyone else still thinks that S.H.I.E.L.D. is S.H.I.E.L.D., there's no problem, so they think that Captain America is a fugitive on the run. He's on the run with Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson, so they try to develop that relationship a little bit. And, of course, we get introduced to Anthony Mackie, or the Falcon, which will be, Captain America, Steve Rogers' sidekick for many years to come. He does a really outstanding job. Really just an overall good story. Hydra also has their secret weapon, if you will, which is Bucky Barnes, which was Steve Rogers' old army buddy who he thought was dead, so he kind of sees him come back and he has to fight him, fight the brainwashing. Really, really epic. Kind of begs the question, where was Hawkeye in the whole thing? Because Hawkeye's a very much a company man. There
was casting issues, I'm sure.
He was Mr. Shield. So where was Jeremy Renner when everything was going down? Which because if Black Widow was there, why wouldn't Hawkeye be there? Because even in the Avengers, Hawkeye was working for S.H.I.E.L.D. So if this was a movie based upon S.H.I.E.L.D., which it was, just, one of those questions. But
then conversely, you'd almost ask, where's Tony Stark? Because he created a lot of the technology with the helicarriers.
Yeah, but he still remains tertiary. Tony Stark is not going to involve himself in S.H.I.E.L.D. because he's too busy being a billionaire. He gave them the technology, but he considers himself... If he considers himself anything, would be a consultant.
It begs the question, is this a setup for what could potentially, because all the plot elements are there, maybe it's not as expansive as Civil War, with the whole nation being against Captain America, but absolutely we saw the turn where all of S.H.I.E.L.D. potentially could have been against Captain America, and as we know in Civil War, which I don't think we specifically brought up, but Tony Stark ends up becoming the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. So I love how this plays out, and it just, again, begs the question, will this mean that since we got used to Captain America letting his kind of rogue personality show, could this set up to kind of the bigger world stage of what happened in Civil War?
Yeah.
It's just a random question I hypothesize to the public and Greg. Like, could this be something that would lend to casting permitting, copyrights permitting? Could this lead up to Civil War? I have to say it.
They'd have to show Tony Stark's interest in not only being a director, but just a general interest in S.H.I.E.L.D. Because in Avengers, he basically says that he doesn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D. and nothing was done in Captain America to change that. So for him to become the director, he would have to show some either trust or belief in the system.
Then it also shows, speaking back to, which I'm really trying to encourage you guys to read Civil War, by the way, the whole reason I think Tony Stark got involved is that he started becoming kind of more of the family guy and the politician in the political arena, and that the whole thing that kind of prompted him, similar to Batgirl in the sense that tertiary characters kind of play as a main catalyst that help our main character make decisions. He was really driven and compelled to create a faction of superheroes that would follow the Superhuman Registration Act because of this mother that really tugged at his heartstrings, saying, hey, you know what? My son's blood is on your hands, because that school wouldn't have blown up if you would have not been the poster boy about saying you need to hide all your superhumans and encouraging people to hide their identities. So him feeling like what she said is true, blood being on his hands. And even though we're coming in the Marvel Universe with Captain America in the movie arena, just being the only renegade, and seemingly Iron Man doesn't have any interest in S.H.I.E.L.D., well, he sure as hell contributed a lot of technology and input in those hella characters, and they even mentioned as much. So I'm just putting it out there. Maybe you guys could comment at our Mad Comic Podcast Twitter. Let us know what you think, if this could lend to a bigger plot point of Tony Stark eventually being involved more with S.H.I.E.L.D. I hope it goes in that direction so it ties more into the comic. I just had to put it out there.
Also, something to consider for the future, they allude to, and I think they introduced Sharon Carter. So, obviously, Captain America 3 is going to be coming out. Is she going to be a central character? Steve Rogers' love interest / girlfriend.
Even Black Widow talked about her.
Yeah, Black Widow said, "Oh, go on that date with that nurse. What's her name? Sharon." And then I think she was the fake nurse in his same building. But nothing. Definitely nothing develops there. Just they kind of allude to it. So maybe another just an interesting fun fact if they're going to be addressing that later on. And then for the other movie, we're going to kind of double up on Marvel and just briefly speak about Avengers: Age of Ultron, which is going to be coming out next year. Casting and everything for that's pretty much done, basically. I have a couple questions to you, the listener, in general, and if you're familiar with it. So Ultron basically was a sentient computer being created by Dr. Hank Pym, or the Ant-Man, which was one of the first Avengers. Obviously, he hasn't been introduced. There's an Ant-Man movie coming out, but it's not Hank Pym. It's Scott Lang, who's going to be played by Paul Rudd. Regardless, I digress. In this movie, Ultron is actually created by Tony Stark, so that's going to be an interesting take on it. And also, there's going to be a couple new characters in the movie. We've seen them briefly, but...
Well, we just mentioned that they were highlighted in Captain America. So Scarlet Witch in Quicksilver should be making an appearance, which Quicksilver already made an appearance in X-Men.
Yep.
Which was cool. And a lot of people know him from American Horror Story. So love that horror genre to mainstream comics crossover, which I think we're going to see more and more of because, again, zombies are not going anywhere, which I'm happy about. And if you guys didn't know, one last note, if I didn't mention it already, iZombie, I wrote a review about them, and I'll be writing a lot more reviews. It's only in the vein of horror movies. I'm going to get right back to Age of Ultron in a second. It's going to be more about posing questions. But if you want to know any really good reviews about movies that are coming out, indie, horror games, indie TV shows, whether it's BBC or US made, check out me and my friends, what we write. We're just reviewers and we do this for fun, and we write about horror genre specifically. Go to horrormovies.com. That's horror-movies.com. I, myself, and a bunch of other writers, just for fun and for giggles, we just write about horror all day because it's something we're very passionate about.
That's CA, as in Canada. That's the series by Ka. CA.
Canada.
And some really good articles. Definitely check it out. I'm not a big horror movie buff, but definitely some fun articles on there as well.
And if you wanted to talk about anything comics, Greg is a profesh, but he's also a dork, so he never makes you feel intimidated. You could always follow him on Twitter. What's your Twitter?
GNaggy83.
He's GNaggy83. He's at GNaggy83 because the at is important if you want to find... Well, maybe it is. If you want to talk at someone, you put the at. But anyways, Age of Ultron, going back to Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, yes, they made a really awesome appearance at the end of the Captain movie. It is going to be played by that one character for Quicksilver, and then the Olsen twins' younger sister, Elizabeth. She looks...
The lesser-known Olsen twin.
Right, but she's actually a rising star in her own right because she received critical acclaim for some indie movies she's made.
Also in Godzilla.
Looks like she'll make a great Scarlet Witch, who was in the New Avengers at one point, and she was in the Avengers in the comics. She is a very powerful woman. Speaking about powerful women, that's always a big theme of mine. I'm really glad that she's going to be playing one. And the question is, one of the many questions circling around there, especially after San Diego Comic-Con, there's a lot of concept posters and there's a lot of ideas circling around there, like Will they kind of hint along the kind of incestuous line that the comics were kind of alluding to, or would they, I would say more likely kind of bend on more the straight and arrow because it is Marvel, but I think Greg and I were talking about this and talking with friends, is Marvel going to finally diverge into kind of the more darker storylines where our heroes kind of take a wrong turn and then the villains get to rise and try to redeem themselves? Will this be the movie?
Very well could be. And also, I mean, just kind of going back to the casting, there's going to be a couple of characters that you would think should be in an Avengers movie that aren't. Obviously, I've mentioned Ant-Man. Janet Van Dyne and the Wasp, she's still not in it. So these are all characters that they've left out for one reason or another, and we'll see when and if ultimately they make an appearance.
But what about what we like about Ant-Man?
Paul Rudd, but this is a different Ant-Man. There's been 3 Ant-Mans. The Ant-Man that's supposed to be in this Avengers is Hank Pym. The Ant-Man movie with Paul Rudd is Scott Lang, who's a reformed thief, if you will. So it's the same superhero, but different people have taken on the mantle of Ant-Man.
Right.
And this is a different one. This is supposed to be Hank Pym, who I think the rumor is that in the Paul Rudd movie Ant-Man, they're going to introduce the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym, and that's going to be played by Michael Douglas. Interesting things in the works for Avengers. Really excited about it. Definitely helps that it's not a 2-year wait like the Superman Batman movie, so we should have this out in theaters within a year. And I think that pretty much is going to wrap it up for our second episode. Definitely, as Stephanie mentioned, Mad Comics Podcast on Twitter.
It's Mad Comic, not plural, because you only can put so many characters on Twitter as a username. So Mad Comic Podcast. That's our Twitter. We're going to shoot up a Facebook. We're going to have Greg commit to creating it. I created the Twitter. And on a completely different side note, guys, we really are ready, even though it's on our second podcast, we already have 70 plus, very quickly, I think we're going to easily get to 100 by the end of this week for the first podcast. Tell your friends, tell everybody. Go see our reviews. I do free reviews on horror. Greg does a lot of great reviews and fun fantasy leagues for the football season. At the CGC website. We get involved in any way that we can, and they're all free resources because we love sharing things that we can, geek or dork around on. And on a completely different note, I wanted to mention something that's going on to us personally in our lives because it's something that is very prevalent and we're dealing with pretty much every hour. We have a friend of ours in our family. Her name is Nymeria. We named her after one of the direwolves from Game of Thrones.
Arya's direwolf.
It was Arya's direwolf. And we found her in a park in our backyard. And if you don't know where we live in the very hot desert of Arizona. Super hot in the summer. It's the hottest place in the nation. And there's a lot of people out there that just dump their dogs. When we found Nymeria, she seemed fine. She was moving kind of slow. Just a week ago, she lost the use of her hind legs. So the reason why we're telling you this story, you could read more about her story on GoFundMe. We'll go ahead and put a slide up for you to read about her story. We take really good care of our animals.
We're at 7, by the way. We run a makeshift animal shelter.
Yeah, people are starting to nickname us the Doolittles. And again, it's not by design. We only wanted to stick to 2 cats. We're now at 4 cats, 3 dogs. We're trying to pick up to the slack where other people think that pets are just a temporary fun solution when they really should be included in our families, in our lives, and in our hearts. So we're asking if you could help us fund to get Nymeria surgery. Whatever you can afford, great. We're going to start a new Facebook feed, if you will, on Twitter. We're just looking for 1,000 nice people. So 1,000 nice people, if they could all donate $9, or even 9,000 people that could donate $1. GoFundMe, the minimum donation's $5. Maybe we'll put a $9 limit that you can donate. We're just looking for 1,000 good people. If you can't afford it, I understand. A lot of people have had adversity. I totally get it. If you could forward it to someone that you think you can, it would be greatly appreciated. And we're just happy that you guys enjoy our podcast and enjoy all the things that you love in your life. And for us, Nymeria is included now. She's a part of our family. So thank you again so much for listening. Greg and I are passionate about a lot of things, And we just wanted to share one more with you.
And let us know what you want to hear, what you like and dislike about the show. We'll try to tailor it to our audience. So by all means, we are listening.
And then just so you guys know, if you want to get a hold of me to talk all things horror and zombie related, as I am, you can reach me at SB Joyce. And again, you can reach Greg. Where can they reach you at again, Greg? Because you recently changed your Twitter.
GNAGY83. Tweets are usually about comic related stuff and a couple sports stuff and just random nonsense that goes on in the hamster wheel, which is my head. Well, thank you for listening, and we will see you folks next week.
Next week, guys. Have a good one. Shield would dub them, because so poignant that I tell you guys about this article, Entertainment Weekly. It just came out recently. And I think it's kind of on the wings of the fact that a lot of these very popular comic movies, they cast women and it just seems like they missed the mark. Come on, ladies. If you really, really, really want to represent a comic book character that is very much beloved, like Wonder Woman or anybody for that matter, really come represent. And I forgot to mention Michelle Pfeiffer. She was an awesome. She was an
She's
heroine.
your favorite Catwoman.
She was a great villainess, or I'd say someone that operates in the great. But she was my favorite Catwoman for sure. But what I'm getting at is that if guys have to go through that hard, tough training to look the part, why don't women? I want to see that journey. I want to see women kick a lot of ass in and off screen. So that was my last point on that. But yep, we ended last podcast and talking about Batman versus Superman.